My name is Alina Ward. At 34, I was a county records analyst when my parents sold my signature for $380,000. Not my house, not my car, not my savings, my signature. They called it a family arrangement, a clean way to help everyone breathe again. The wealthy Kline family needed a steady live-in assistant for their oldest son, Adrian, a man they said had been ruined by a stroke. My parents needed the liens off their house, the credit cards cleared, and the kind of rescue that did not come with questions. So they put me in a navy dress, drove me to a glass office building in Providence, and handed me a contract that said I would become Adrian Kline's personal care coordinator for 1 year. My mother tapped the page with one pink nail and whispered, "Just sign, Alina. It is not like anyone else was waiting for you." Across the table, Adrian's younger brother smiled like he had already bought the room. 1 year later, in front of the Harbor House Foundation Board, my parents, 3 attorneys, and 40 donors holding champagne they had not earned, I opened a blue ledger. By the time I turned to page 43, nobody was smiling. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Her Hidden Revenge, where ordinary people meet impossible families and find their footing through patience, principle, and one well-timed truth. If a story here ever helps you breathe a little easier, drop a comment and subscribe. I need to back up. I grew up in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, in a duplex with thin walls and thick secrets. My father, Roland Ward, was a man who could make a church usher believe he was generous while borrowing $20 from the collection plate. My mother, Denise, was softer on the surface and sharper underneath. She could cry on command, forgive herself before anyone accused her, and make every bill in the house somehow my fault. I was the useful daughter. That was not an insult in our family. It was a job title. When I was 9, useful meant sitting at the kitchen table with a shoebox full of overdue notices, while my mother told me which envelopes not to open when the landlord came by. I did not understand interest rates yet, but I understood her face. I understood that if I sorted the pink bills from the white ones, she would breathe easier and call me her little grown-up. When I was 22, useful meant using my tax refund to stop the electricity from being disconnected the week before Christmas. My mother cried into my sweater and said, "Someday we will make this up to you." Then she ordered a new dining set on store credit in January because she said the house needed hope. That was how it worked. Their mistake became my emergency. Their emergency became my character test. If I helped, I was a good daughter. If I hesitated, I was cold. Nobody ever said thank you without attaching the next problem to it. I worked through community college, then finished a degree in records management at night. By 31, I was a county records analyst, the person who knew where old deeds went, how liens got filed, why a missing signature could freeze a deal for 6 months, and how a public document could tell the truth without raising its voice. Quiet work, exact work. Nobody clapped for it, but paper did not flatter anyone. Paper remembered. My parents remembered only what helped them. They remembered that I had a stable job. They remembered that I had no husband. They remembered that I answered emergency calls. They forgot the calls were always emergencies because they had spent 20 years setting fire to ordinary life. The phone rang on a Thursday morning in February. I was at the records office, scanning a stack of probate filings, when my mother said, "Your father is going to lose the house." I asked how much. She sniffed like the number had injured her. "It is not about money, Alina. It is about family." When Denise Ward said it was not about money, it was always about money. The real number was $380,000, $2 home equity loans, 3 credit cards, a private note from a man at my father's lodge, tax arrears, a failed seafood truck my father had bought with retirement money and sold for scrap 7 months later. The house was 90 days from foreclosure. I told her I could not fix that. She went quiet. Then she said the sentence she had been saving. "There is a position. A private family needs someone like you." Someone like me? That phrase had followed me my whole life. Someone steady, someone single, Someone practical. Someone who knew how to fill out forms, make calls, calm people down, and leave her own life in the hallway until everyone else was done needing things. The Kline family owned half of Newport without putting their name on most of it. Commercial buildings, old warehouses, 2 marinas, a charitable foundation called Harbor House that funded legal aid and emergency shelter. Their younger son, Marcus Kline, ran the family office. His older brother, Adrian, had suffered a stroke 3 years earlier at 37. My mother said he needed a care coordinator. Not a nurse, not exactly. Someone to manage appointments, records, household paperwork, and daily routines. The contract was for 1 year, housing included. Salary listed at $72,000. A separate family referral payment of $380,000 would go to my parents after I completed the first 90 days. I stared at the attachment she had sent me. "Referral payment," I said. "They are grateful," she said quickly. "For what?" "For us connecting them with you." I almost laughed. They had not connected anyone with anything. They had sold my availability. I refused. For 3 days, I refused. Then my father drove to my office and waited beside my car. He looked older than he had the week before, smaller. The collar of his jacket was frayed. He held a folder against his chest like a shield. "I messed up," he said. That was new. My father did not admit things. He performed regret the way some men performed prayer, eyes lowered, voice soft, waiting for someone else to pay the cost. "If we lose the house, your mother has nowhere to go." "You mean you have nowhere to go?" He looked away. "Same thing." It was not the same thing, but I knew what he was doing. He was placing my mother in front of him like furniture in a doorway. The contract signing was the next Monday at 10:00 a.m. in a conference room on the 22nd floor of Kline Tower. My parents arrived early. My mother wore pearls. My father wore the gray suit he wore to funerals and bank meetings. Marcus Kline stood when I walked in. 41, tall, expensive haircut, smile flat as a receipt. "Elena, finally, we have heard you are very organized." I did not ask who had told him. My mother was already glowing. The attorney slid the contract toward me in one thick stack. Confidentiality, household access, weekly reports, a medical release that stopped just short of saying I would become Adrian's voice. The attorney was a narrow woman named Patris Bellamy who spoke like every sentence had been washed in cold water. She pointed at each tab with a silver pen. "This is standard household confidentiality. This is access authorization. This is the non-disparagement clause." "Non-disparagement?" I asked. Marcus smiled without looking up from his phone. "Families with public reputations need privacy." Patris said, "It simply prevents you from making statements that would harm the Kline family or its affiliated entities. Even if the statements are true." My father shifted in his chair. My mother made a tiny sound through her nose, the sound she used in church when she wanted me to stop embarrassing her. Patris's pen hovered over the page. "Truth is not always the issue in private service agreements." That sentence should have put frost on the table. Instead, my mother leaned close enough for her perfume to cover the paper and whispered, "Please, Elena, we cannot survive another complication." My job sounded harmless when Patris said it. Live on the estate. Keep Adrian's days orderly. Send Marcus weekly notes about his condition. "Capacity observations?" I asked. Marcus leaned back. "Adrian has good days and bad days. His condition affects business decisions." "I am not a doctor." "No, you are organized. That is what we need." Adrian was not in the room. That bothered me before I knew why. My mother touched my arm. "Honey, do not make this hard." I read the page again. My notes would go into the family office record. The family office record could support future decisions. Future decisions was not defined. "Where is Adrian?" I asked. Marcus's smile tightened. Resting. Does he know I am being hired? My brother knows what he needs to know. That should have been the moment I stood up. Instead, I looked across the table at my parents. My father's hands were folded. My mother's eyes were wet, not with fear exactly, but with expectation. They had already spent the rescue in their heads. The house paid off. The calls stopped. The old life continuing because I had stepped between them and the consequence again. I signed. I will not dress that up. I signed because I was tired. Because guilt is a language you learn before you learn your own name. Because my parents had trained me to believe that if I could prevent disaster and did not, the disaster belonged to me. When the pen touched paper, my mother's shoulders dropped as if she had been holding up the roof with her bones. My father rubbed both hands over his face and would not meet my eyes. Marcus watched my signature form with the calm attention of a man watching a lock click shut. Patris gathered the pages immediately. "Congratulations," she said. It was the wrong word. Everyone in that room knew it was the wrong word. But wrong words are useful when right ones would slow the transaction down. The Kline estate sat behind a stone wall in Middletown, 12 acres of clipped grass, dark windows, and a driveway that curved like it did not want visitors to arrive too quickly. The main house was gray shingle, 3 stories, ocean air in the wood. The carriage house was bigger than my apartment. That first night, I sat on the edge of the carriage house bed and listened to the ocean hit rocks I could not see. There was a basket on the dresser with imported crackers, mineral water, and a typed welcome note from Celia. The note said, "We hope you find the arrangement comfortable." Comfortable. At 1:12 a.m., I opened the contract again on my laptop and searched the word termination. If I quit before 1 year, the family referral payment could be reviewed. If I breached confidentiality, damages could be pursued. If my weekly reports were incomplete, compensation could be withheld. They had not hired me into a job. They had parked me inside a consequence. Adrian was in the library when I first met him. He sat near the window in a low leather chair, a notebook open on his lap, his right hand curled stiffly against his thigh. The stroke had affected his speech and part of his right side. That much was true, but his eyes moved quickly when I entered. Sharp, annoyed, present. Marcus stood behind him. "Adrian, this is Alina. She will help us keep things orderly." Adrian looked at me, then at Marcus, then back at me. His mouth moved once before the word came out. "Us." One word, rough, slow, completely clear. Marcus laughed too loudly. "He gets frustrated. Do not take it personally." Adrian's jaw tightened. He lifted his left hand, one finger up, asking for time. Marcus kept talking. "You will learn his cues. Most of the time it is easier if we interpret." Adrian made a sound then, not a word. A hard breath pushed through a mouse that would not cooperate quickly enough. Marcus put a hand on the back of his chair. "See, frustration." I did not know Adrian yet, but I knew the difference between frustration and being interrupted. I had seen it in public records counters when elderly people tried to explain a deed problem and their adult children answered for them. The body slows down. The face stays awake. So I waited. The room stretched around us. Marcus checked his watch. Celia looked toward the hall like silence was bad manners. Finally, Adrian forced out one more word. "Mine." Marcus frowned. "What is yours?" Adrian looked at me, not at him. His eyes went to the notebook, the pencil, the room, the air around his own body. "Mine." I understood enough. I said, "I won't." Adrian lifted the pencil in his left hand and wrote something in the notebook. He tore out the page and held it toward me. I took it. It said, "Ask me before you report me." 5 words. That was the first thing Adrian Kline ever gave me. Not a greeting, not a request, a boundary. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. By the end of that first week, the crease had softened through the word report, and the corner had turned dark from my thumb. The first month was quiet. Marcus sent instructions through email even though he lived in the east wing of the same house. His wife, Celia, treated Adrian's silence like a household inconvenience. The staff liked Adrian. They did not say it directly. They said it in the way they left his tea where he could reach it, waited for his words instead of finishing them, and lowered their voices when Marcus came into the room. My weekly notes were supposed to be simple. Adrian ate breakfast. Adrian finished therapy. Adrian rested after lunch. Marcus wanted uglier words. Confused, dependent, unstable. The second week, his assistant delivered a cream folder by hand, like a warning that wanted fingerprints. Inside was a template with one sentence already waiting for me. Adrian became fixated on business matters, beyond his current comprehension. I read it twice at the kitchen counter in the carriage house. The paper smelled faintly of toner and expensive stationery. My name was printed at the top, as if I had asked for it. When I walked to the library with the folder, Adrian looked at the first page and went still. His left hand curled around the arm of his chair until his knuckles whitened. "Did they make you write this before?" I asked. He tapped the page once, then pointed toward the hallway where Celia had just passed. "Nurse," I guessed. He nodded. "What happened to her?" He wrote slowly, each letter dragged out by effort. "Quit." Then under it, he added one more word. "Scared." That was when I stopped thinking of the weekly reports as paperwork. They were bricks. Marcus wanted my handwriting in the wall. I wrote facts. Adrian finished therapy. Adrian corrected a wrong date in his file. Adrian remembered names people assumed he had lost. Then I wrote the sentence Marcus did not want. Adrian requested the Harbor House audit files from 2022. That last sentence got a response within 3 minutes. Do not provide him with foundation materials. They upset him. I stared at the email for a full minute. They upset him. Not he lacks capacity. Not the documents are private. They upset him. I had worked with records long enough to know when someone was hiding behind tone. Adrian noticed me noticing. That evening, he tapped twice on the library table while I sorted appointment forms. Tap, tap. I looked up. He pointed to the bottom shelf. A row of old blue accounting ledgers sat behind a stack of art books, the kind with cloth covers and numbered spines. The 2021 ledger had a pale coffee ring on the front corner and a frayed cloth edge where too many hands had pulled it free. I pulled it out. Harbor House Foundation, 2021 Disbursement Review. His left hand moved slowly, but not randomly. He turned to the inside back cover and pointed at a name. North Pier Consulting. Then he pointed at his brother's name on a framed board photo hanging over the fireplace. Marcus Kline, Executive Director. You found this? I asked. Adrian nodded. Before the stroke. Another nod. Did Marcus know? He smiled once, not happy, not surprised, the kind of smile people make when the answer is so obvious it hurts. The next morning, Marcus asked me to change my reports. He came to the carriage house at 7:15 without knocking. I was making coffee. He placed a printed copy of my last weekly note on the counter. This is not helpful. It is accurate. Accurate and helpful are not the same thing. He had underlined the sentence about Adrian requesting the foundation files. My brother has fixations. You need to record them as fixations. He asked for old files. He obsesses over things he does not understand anymore. There it was, not the whole truth, but its outline. I picked up my coffee. Then have a doctor write that. Marcus stared at me. Your parents said you understood loyalty. They say a lot of things when money is involved. His face changed, only for half a second, enough. He stepped closer to the counter, not enough to touch me, enough to make the small kitchen feel owned. "You signed confidentiality," he said. "I remember." "Then you understand that loose interpretations can create legal problems. For you, for your parents." There it was, my parents placed on the counter between us like a loaded glass. "Are you threatening them?" Marcus smiled. "I am reminding you that everyone entered this arrangement voluntarily." Adrian did not. His smile faded. "My brother does not understand what he needs. That is the entire point." Behind him, through the open carriage house door, I saw a staff gardener pause on the path and then keep walking. People in that house were always seeing things and deciding how much survival required them to forget. Marcus tapped the printed report. "Next week, use the template." I did not answer. He leaned in just enough that I could smell mint on his breath. "Elena, do not confuse access with authority." Then he left my kitchen without closing the door. The 90-day mark came in May. My parents received the $380,000 referral payment. They did not tell me. My mother posted a photo of new kitchen counters on Facebook with the caption, "Fresh start. Grateful heart." I called her. "You got paid." It was part of the agreement. "You did not even wait to see if I was okay." "Elena, do not be dramatic. You are living on an estate." "Living on an estate, like that made me free." "How much is left?" She went quiet. That was answer enough. 2 days later, she called me on video while standing in that kitchen, the new counters shining behind her like proof of a miracle. My father moved through the background carrying a box from an appliance store. "Doesn't it look peaceful?" she asked. I looked at the pale stone, the brass handles, the little bowl of lemons she had arranged near the sink. "It looks expensive." Her mouth tightened. "We deserved one nice thing after everything. After everything you did. After everything we survived." That was my mother's gift. She could turn any damage into weather. Nobody caused it. It simply happened to the family, and then the family needed Elena to bring towels. My father came to the phone and said, "The lien is cleared. That is what matters." "No," I said. "What matters is that you took the payment and never asked what Marcus wanted from me." He shrugged, small and defensive. "You are good with difficult people." "I am not a shield." My mother looked offended, as if I had insulted her new counters. "You always make help sound ugly." I ended the call before I said something that would have made her the victim for another 10 years. By then, I had learned Adrian's rhythms. Morning was best. Stress made speech harder. Marcus made it almost impossible. But numbers did not scare Adrian. He could not always say what he saw, so he marked it. Red pencil, blue pencil, black pencil. Every color meant something was wrong. He had been a forensic accountant before the stroke. Harbor House had been his mother's foundation. She built it after leaving a domestic violence shelter at 19. That part mattered to Adrian. He had grown up hearing the story. Legal aid saved his mother first, then a safe place to sleep, then a job, then the first little real estate investment that became the Kline fortune. Harbor House was not decoration to him. It was the reason the money had a spine. Marcus treated it like a logo. I learned later that Marcus had grown up in Adrian's shadow so long he started calling the shadow theft. Their mother trusted Adrian with the foundation files and left Marcus the smiling rooms. Marcus heard that as a verdict. He was not stealing from strangers in his own mind. He was correcting an old humiliation with other people's money. If you're listening to this, and you've ever been called difficult for asking for the record, stay with me, because the record is where this whole thing turned. The blue ledger Adrian showed me covered 2021. Then there were ledgers for 2022 and 2023. The payments looked harmless at first. Then the same number kept staring back. $18,400. $18,400. $18,400. Always low enough to slide past the board. Different vendors, same mailing address, same initials. Marcus Kline. I did not tell Adrian right away. I needed to be sure. County records taught me that suspicion is cheap. Proof costs time. So I checked what I could without touching anything Marcus could call private. Over 6 weeks, the pattern got uglier. Adrian had questioned the payments. Marcus told the board Adrian was overextended. Then the payments grew. Then Adrian scheduled an outside audit. Then Adrian had the stroke. Marcus got control. The audit vanished. But the payments tripled after Adrian was removed. During those 6 weeks, Marcus changed shape around me. He stopped being polite in writing and became polite in person, which was worse. An email can be saved. A hallway smile cannot. Once, he found me outside the records archive with a box of old board packets in my arms. Heavy reading, he said. Old minutes. For Adrian. For the file. He took the top folder from the box and flipped it open without asking. You know what happens when employees go looking for secrets. I held the box tighter. They usually find out why someone called them secrets. His eyes lifted. You have a county job waiting for you after this, correct? I said nothing. Government offices care about ethics complaints, confidentiality issues, misuse of private records. A person can lose a quiet career over one dramatic misunderstanding. My pulse moved into my throat. He closed the folder and set it back on the box. And your parents, Alina, they are not built for litigation. Your father especially. Men like him panic and say unfortunate things. For a second, I hated my father for being usable. Then I hated myself for the thought. That was how Marcus worked. He did not have to put a hand on your shoulder. He only had to name the people already standing there. That night, I almost deleted the timeline. I sat in the carriage house with the laptop open and my finger above the trackpad. The file name was boring on purpose, appointment notes draft. Inside were dates, vendor names, page numbers, public filing links, and tiny comments I had written to myself in brackets. Could be coincidence. Need backup. Ask HL. Adrian knocked once on the open doorframe. He stood with his cane in his left hand, breathing hard from the walk across the path. You should not be out here alone, I said. He looked at the laptop, then at me. His mouth fought him for a long moment. Afraid. I laughed once, and it came out wrong. Yes. He nodded like fear was not shameful. Then he held out his notebook. On the page he had written, me too, continue. I still had his first note in the pocket of my cardigan. Ask me before you report me. The crease had grown soft from being unfolded and folded again whenever I needed to remember the difference between helping someone and taking over their voice. One afternoon in July, I found him in the library with the 2023 ledger open. His left hand rested on page 43. The page was filled with his old handwriting, smaller and faster than the careful notes he wrote now. Same address. No services. Ask HL. Who is HL? I asked. Adrian closed his eyes. His mouth worked around the name. Hannah. Hannah who? Leigh. It took him almost a minute to say both words. He looked exhausted by the end. Hannah Lee had been the finance director at Harbor House until November 2021. Her LinkedIn said she now worked for a nonprofit in New Haven. I found a phone number through an old vendor contact list. I called from the grocery store parking lot. When I said Adrian's name, she stopped breathing for a second. Is he safe? She asked. Not how is he. Is he safe? I felt the hair rise on my arms. Why would you ask that? Because the week before his stroke, Adrian told me he thought someone was draining Harbor House through shell vendors. He asked me to pull backup files. I did. Then Marcus fired me for cause, said I mishandled donor data. It followed me for a year. Why didn't you go to the board? I asked. I tried. Her voice got smaller. Marcus reached them first. By the time I called Margaret Sloan, she had already been told I was unstable, angry about being fired, possibly exposing donor privacy. Do you know how hard it is to sound credible after a rich man has already explained you? I did know, not from rich men but from families. Same machinery, better suits. Do you still have copies? No. My stomach dropped. Then she said, but Adrian does. The copies were in a safe deposit box at Seaboard Credit Union. Adrian had opened it under his own name 2 weeks before the stroke. Hannah had watched him put in a flash drive, original invoices, and a notarized letter addressed to the board. I thought he had already used it, she said. He had the stroke before he could. Hannah was quiet. Then Marcus has been lucky for 3 years. Luck ran out on a Tuesday. I drove Adrian to Seaboard Credit Union with his passport, his old signature card, and the key he kept taped under the 3rd drawer of his desk. He signed slowly. The branch manager looked at his hand, then at me. Does he understand what he is doing? Adrian looked directly at her. Yes. One word, harder than any speech I could have made. The box held exactly what Hannah said it would. A flash drive, original invoices, a sealed envelope marked board copy. And one page Marcus had never wanted anyone to find. 6 months before the stroke, Adrian had named an independent patient advocate if he ever became unable to communicate clearly. Not Marcus. Not Celia. An advocate named Ruth Bell. Marcus had never mentioned Ruth Bell. We found her in Warwick. Retired nurse, 67, short gray hair, direct eyes. She had worked with Adrian's mother at the first shelter Harbor House funded. When I handed her the revocation copy, she did not look surprised. Adrian knew his brother, she said. She visited the next morning with 2 specialists Marcus had not chosen. The results came back 2 weeks later. Language and movement were impaired. His mind was not. With time and tools, Adrian could make his own decisions. I read the last word 4 times. Capable. That word did more than describe Adrian. It cleared a room around him. We had the ledgers. We had Hannah. We had Ruth. We had Adrian's own proof waiting in a sealed envelope. And we had a board meeting in 9 days. The annual Harbor House donor reception was always held in September at Kline Tower. Marcus called it stewardship. Adrian called it theater, or he would have if the word came easily. 4 days before the reception, Marcus tried one last private room. He asked me to meet him in the small study off the East Hall, the one with no staff traffic and a door that closed softly. I did not sit. Neither did he. I know Ruth Bell has been here, he said. Adrian invited her. Adrian is being influenced. By his own documents. He placed a folder on the desk. Inside were copies of my reports, my contract, and the referral payment addendum with my parents' names highlighted. You are in a very delicate position. If you push this, the payment to your parents becomes part of the story. Your mother will be humiliated. Your father may be investigated for misrepresentation. Your own signature will be questioned. Questioned by who? By anyone I need. There was no smile now. That almost helped. The mask was tiring for both of us. You brought me here because you thought I would write what you wanted, I said. I brought you here because your parents described you accurately. The room went very still. Compliant, I said. Marcus did not deny it. Practical, burdened, used to absorbing impact. Pick the word you prefer. For a moment, I saw the whole arrangement from above. My parents on one side, Marcus on the other, both convinced that need was the same thing as ownership. I picked up the folder and handed it back to him. You made one mistake. His eyes narrowed. Only one. You confused quiet with finished. I left before he could answer. Marcus planned to ask the board to approve a restructuring, that would give the family office permanent oversight of Harbor House disbursements. The packet said it was for efficiency. Efficiency is a beautiful word for people who do not want witnesses. My parents called 3 days before the reception. My mother sounded bright, too bright. Marcus invited us Friday. Isn't that thoughtful? Why? He said there may be a permanent position for you, something with benefits. Alina, this could be a real future. For me or for you? Silence. Then my father took the phone. We are not giving the money back. I had not asked. Nobody said you were. Marcus said there may be questions about the referral. There it was. Marcus had called them. He knew something was moving, and he was reminding my parents that they were tied to him by a check they had already spent. Dad, I said, what did you tell him about me before I signed? He breathed into the phone. Nothing that wasn't true. What did you tell him? My mother whispered something in the background. He said that you were compliant. Compliant. Not steady, not organized, not qualified. Compliant. I hung up and sat on the edge of the carriage house bed for a long time. That was the moment the last soft part of me went quiet. Not dead, not gone, just quiet. After that call, I went to the main house and found Adrian in the library. Ruth was there, reviewing the tablet phrases with him. They had built a list for the reception. I object. I request board discussion. Please allow Alina Ward to present records. My speech impairment is not consent. Adrian practiced each one with the device, then without it. The human words came slower. Some broke halfway. Some never arrived. But he tried them anyway, sweating through the collar of his blue shirt while Ruth waited with the patience of someone who knew help was not the same as rescue. At the bottom of the list, Adrian had added one sentence himself. Do not let them make this private. I looked at that line for a long time. Then I touched the old folded note in my pocket. The corner was nearly rounded off now. Ask me before you report me. It had started as Adrian's boundary. By then, it had become mine too. I won't, I said. He studied my face, then typed one more phrase. Not just for me. That was the first time I understood the size of it. Marcus had stolen money, yes, but he had also stolen rooms. Rooms where Adrian should have spoken. Rooms where Hannah should have been believed. Rooms where Women Harbor House served should have received help that became an invoice instead. Friday came with rain. Kline Tower looked silver from the street, all glass and reflected sky. The reception was on the 22nd floor, the same floor where I had signed the contract 7 months earlier. 40 donors, 9 board members, Marcus in a charcoal suit, Celia in white, my parents near the back, my mother's pearls shining under the lights. Adrian arrived with Ruth Bell, not with me. That mattered. He was not being delivered. He was attending. Marcus saw him and crossed the room fast. Adrian, this is too much stimulation. Adrian held up one hand. Ruth stepped forward. Mr. Kline is here as a board member. Marcus's face tightened. He is not active. Adrian reached into his jacket and handed him a copy of the neuropsych report. Marcus read the first page, then the second. By the third, his ears were red. The board chair, Margaret Sloan, tapped her glass at 6:10. Marcus gave his presentation. Clean slides, warm language, pictures of smiling families outside apartment buildings, emergency shelter placements, legal aid clinics, donor impact, then the final slide. He was good. I need you to understand that. People like Marcus do not survive on cruelty alone. They survive because they can sound reasonable while standing on top of damage. He thanked donors by name. He made a small joke about Rhode Island weather. He spoke about vulnerable families with a softness that made 2 women near the front nod. He paused on a photo of a young mother holding a toddler outside an apartment door and said, "This is why oversight matters." Adrian's left hand, tightened around the edge of the table. My mother dabbed at her eyes near the back. I could not tell if she was moved by the speech or by the idea that Marcus might still save her from being exposed. Proposed operational efficiency resolution. Permanent disbursement, oversight by the Kline family office. There it was, the last door. Margaret asked for discussion. Marcus looked around the room like discussion was a formality. Adrian pressed a small button on the tablet in front of him. A text-to-speech voice filled the boardroom. I object. Every head turned. The voice was flat, electronic and perfect. Marcus laughed once. Adrian, this is not the time. The tablet spoke again. It is exactly the time. Ruth looked at me. That was my cue. I walked to the front table carrying the blue ledger, the sealed board envelope, and a stack of copies. My hands were steady. My heart was not, but hands matter in rooms like that. My name is Alina Ward, I said. I was hired as Mr. Kline's care coordinator in February. Part of my job was to maintain accurate records. These are records. Marcus stepped toward me. Alina, sit down. I opened the blue ledger to page 43. 4 vendors appear again and again, I said. Different names, same address, same initials. I turned the ledger so the board could see page 43. It looked boring from across the room. Blue lines, black ink, numbers in columns. Marcus had counted on that. This entry paid $18,400 for emergency housing coordination. The shelter has no record of placing anyone that week. Margaret Sloan put on her glasses. How do you know that? I placed a copy of the shelter response beside it. Because I asked them. A donor whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath. Marcus said, "This is confidential operational material." Adrian's tablet answered before I could. Foundation funds are not family secrets. That sentence changed the temperature of the room. I placed one corporate filing next to the ledger and tapped the initials. MK. The board chair leaned forward. Marcus Kline, she asked. Marcus laughed again, but it came out thin. This is ridiculous. It should be, I said. That is why it worked. Small payments, safe names, just enough paperwork to make honest people look away. I slid the invoices across the table. Same mistake on every page, same phone number, same initials after the board packet was already dated. One of the attorneys stood from the side wall. Ms. Ward, are you represented by counsel tonight? No, I said, but the records are. I placed the invoices down next. Adrian copied these before his stroke. Hannah Lee helped him, then she was fired. Hannah stood from the back of the room. I had not known if she would come. She did. That is true, she said. The room went still. Hannah's hands shook, but her voice did not. I pulled back up for Adrian in September 2021, she said. I found invoices with no service confirmations and vendors I could not verify. I reported it internally. Within 2 weeks, I was locked out of the finance system and accused of mishandling donor files. Marcus pointed at her. You signed a separation agreement. I signed it because you threatened to ruin my next job. The board chair looked at Marcus then, not at Hannah. That was another shift. Small, but real. For 3 years, he had been the person explaining everyone else. Now people were watching him explain himself. My mother gripped my father's arm. Celia stopped smiling. Marcus looked at Hannah like she had walked through a locked door. Then Margaret Sloan turned to the woman seated beside outside counsel. Laura, did your office verify the shelter placement records last week? Laura Chen, the compliance auditor Marcus had hired for the donor packet, looked down at her binder. She had no history with me, no loyalty to Hannah, and no reason to protect Adrian. That was why the room listened before she spoke. We verified 3 sample weeks, she said. The shelter records do not match the invoices. Ms. Ward's copies match what we received directly from the shelters. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, the facts had arrived from someone he had not had time to make personal. I pulled out the independent evaluation. Adrian has trouble speaking. He does not have trouble understanding. Adrian pressed the tablet again. My brother has used my speech problem as a lock. Nobody moved. He pressed again. Elena found the key. I almost lost my voice there, almost, but the documents were not finished. I opened the sealed board envelope. Inside was Adrian's letter, dated 6 days before his stroke. I read only the line that mattered. I believe foundation funds are being diverted through vendors controlled by Marcus Kline. Marcus said, that letter is 3 years old. So are the transfers, I said. Adrian pressed the tablet again. I wrote that before I lost my speech. Then he lifted his eyes to the board. I did not lose my mind. The electronic voice did not shake. Mine almost did. Across the room, my mother's mouth opened, then closed. She had spent my whole life treating silence as agreement. Watching a silent man refuse her kind of world seemed to frighten her more than the ledger. Margaret Sloane stood. Is there more? I placed the flash drive on the table. The full packet is here. Outside counsel has it. So does the State Charities Division. I did not say criminal. I did not say prison. I did not need to. Rooms like that know what government copies mean. Marcus turned to my parents. You knew she was unstable. There it was, the last throw. When facts fail, attack the person carrying them. My father looked at the floor. My mother found her voice. Elena, honey, don't do this. We can all talk privately. Privately, the favorite room of people who survive by controlling the story. I turned to her. You were paid $380,000 to bring me into this. A small sound moved through the donors. Not a gasp exactly, more like the air leaving a tire. My mother's face went white. That was a referral. You told Marcus I was compliant. My father closed his eyes. I pulled out the final page, the care agreement addendum, the one I had requested from the attorney's office 2 weeks earlier under my own signature. The referral payment was contingent on my first 90 days of weekly capacity observations being submitted to the family office. Those reports were supposed to help build a record that Adrian was dependent, confused, and unable to participate. I looked at Marcus. I wrote facts instead. The donors were no longer whispering. They were watching my parents now with the same polite horror they had usually reserved for scandals in other people's families. My mother stepped forward. We did not understand it that way. You understood the amount. We were desperate. So was Adrian. That stopped her, not because she cared about Adrian, because for once, desperation was not a coupon only she could use. Marcus tried to recover. This is emotional manipulation. Ms. Ward is projecting family resentment onto foundation governance. Margaret Sloane turned to the attorney beside her. Is the State Charities Division already in possession of these records? The attorney looked at the flash drive, then at Marcus, then back at Margaret. If Ms. Ward's statement is accurate, we need to pause all votes immediately. It is accurate, Hannah said. Ruth Bell added, and Mr. Kline is prepared to answer questions with accommodations. For the first time all night, Marcus had no room ready. He had words, many of them, but no room. Adrian pressed the tablet. She asked me before she reported me. 7 words this time, not 5. Progress can look like anything. The board voted that night. Marcus's restructuring died without a motion. Then they took his authority away. One motion, then another, then another. Marcus stood by the window, while the room he used to own learned how to speak without him. Marcus left before dessert. Celia followed. My parents stayed because people like my parents always stay until they know whether money is still possible. My mother approached me near the elevator. "You humiliated us." "No," I said. "I documented you." My father whispered, "What happens to the money?" There he was, the real man under the gray suit, not asking if I was okay, not asking if Adrian was safe, asking what happened to the money. "That is between you, Marcus, and the attorneys. We cannot pay it back." "Then you should not have sold something you did not own." The elevator opened. I stepped inside with Adrian and Ruth. My mother called after me. "Elena, we are your parents." Adrian's tablet spoke before I could. So were mine. The doors closed. Here is what happened after. The independent audit found $1.8 million in diverted or unsupported payments. Marcus tried to survive it with lawyers, pauses, careful statements, and that same reasonable voice. But he lost the thing he cared about most. Control. Harbor House survived. That mattered to Adrian more than any headline. Hannah Lee came back for 6 months. The first time she chaired a finance meeting again, Adrian attended by video from his new apartment. He used the tablet for most of it, but near the end Margaret asked if he wanted to add anything. He took his time. Everyone waited. Not the fake waiting people do while preparing to interrupt. Real waiting, respectful waiting, the kind that gives a sentence somewhere safe to land. Finally, Adrian said, "Thank you." 2 words, rough, slow, completely enough. Adrian moved out of the main house into a condo near the water, not because he needed less help, because he needed fewer people calling help control. Ruth Bell stayed in his life as advocate, then as friend. I resigned the next Monday. My parents did lose the house eventually, not because I punished them, because a rescue that teaches nothing only delays the bill. They moved into a rental in Warwick. My mother called me once a week for a month, then once a month, then stopped when I stopped answering guilt as if it were a summons. I did not sue them. I did not scream. I did not make a speech at Thanksgiving. I sent 1 letter, certified mail, 1 page. I will speak with you when you can discuss what happened without asking me to fix the cost of it. They have not called since. Adrian and I never became the kind of story people try to make out of 2 wounded people in the same room. There was no sudden romance, no soft focus ending. We became something steadier. 2 people who understood the difference between being helped and being handled. I went back to county records for a while. Then Harbor House offered me a job helping women leaving financial abuse get access to the records they needed. I took it. First day, I sat at a small desk with a box of intake forms and cried for 3 minutes before opening the first file. Not because I was sad. Because for once, the paperwork was not a chain. It was a door. The blue ledger is in the Harbor House archive now. Page 43 is copied in the training manual, not because it is dramatic, because it is simple. Adrian's first note is in my desk drawer. The corner is soft now, and the fold still runs through report. Some mornings before a hard meeting, I touch it once and remember that care is not control. Evidence is not betrayal. Asking first is a way of giving someone their voice back. Sometimes I think about the conference room where I signed the contract. My mother tapping the page, Marcus smiling, my father staring at his folded hands, all of them believing that my signature was the easiest thing in the room to buy. They were wrong. A signature is not surrender unless you stop reading what comes after it. That's my story. A blue ledger, a safe deposit key, and 1 man who needed time to speak. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. If your family ever calls you useful like it is love, listen carefully. Useful is what people call you when they like the work but not the person.